Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days anyway. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk. Already got some people joining in, chiming in over there, including Ida Beza Gardner with the hi and the wave. Do appreciate that. And dropping those likes and reacts, including Ida, including Monica Cervantes and RJ over there. It's another busy start to the week. I don't know. I feel like I've been running around with a chicken with my head cut off, but also simultaneously hair on fire and the pants. I don't know. There's been too much going on today. So just trying to boil down to some of the major things, including Marky Mendingo right off the bat with the, roadway troubles, messes. I mean, it's planned, but still not like fun to go through because, that shutdown on I-10 near the state line, well, on the northern part of it anyway, it's still technically I-10. Well, it's east and westbound that way, but as they head towards Las Cruces, let's just say, even though avoiding that area this weekend, I had a hell of a time even getting around even the end of last week, to be honest with you, as they were just preparing for it. But that complete shutdown as part of the widening project, that is very much needed, but still not fun to go through. It's a take your medicine kind of moment, right? Marky Mendingo saying wrestler was a mess today, 45 minutes from the freeway to Red. That unfortunately sounds about right. And the shutdown does indeed continue, and we'll talk about that. And also right lane closed, but no construction workers present. That's always frustrating, isn't it? When you see that clearly something is supposed to be happening here, but no one's there. Anyone who's gone around, particularly some of the more western side parts of Mesa recently, has been having that bit of fun. Was stuck at a stoplight for like 10 minutes in recent weeks. So that's been fun. Not quite out of the scope, though. There are, of course, all the list of projects that are also going on, the tech stock closures from now through the 12th, at the very least, released right now. And RJ saying, so West Side, not always the best side. I mean, each side has its own charm, and the roadways are certainly not part of it right now for the West Side. I will freely admit that. But other major things going on, including interesting discussions on what is going on with the AI and its response in the borderland. Also, a notable appointment of a local involved person. That name will definitely be recognized to some state commissions, but also some concerns about water use in our region. Some alarms being sounded, not immediately, though. Don't go out and just leave the hose running in your yard by any means, but issues and concerns for next year, as well as an increased focus that I've been hearing some of as well about, particularly with back to school vaping. And we've talked about the security concerns, the issues, things going on with that. They're certainly also a part of it. But the vaping, particularly THC vaping, if you've been seeing more around town about this, including on billboards, you're certainly not alone. So we'll delve into that as well in some of theirs. And of course, State House, I feel like we haven't paid as much attention as it's due, because there are definitely a whole lot of things going on, at the very least involving Austin, or the state government headquartered in Austin, I should put it that way, but certainly in the state capital, both the AL and the OL as well, because there is, of course, the lead up to the impeachment trial for embattled Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, though still looking at some legal machinations or workarounds, a lot of ways to end up putting it, including trying to, just the headline from the Texas Tribune, invalidate every article of impeachment before trial. So we'll check in on that and talk about that as well. So just a lot going on and happening around here, but border issues also, of course, continue to abound. A lot of focus on that Eagle Pass area. Some headlines we didn't really get to because Friday and what we do on Friday, and the many interesting ways that I call that airstrike on myself every Friday. There's still some news items that we got to follow up on there, including more response and not a verbatim bring it on, but as close as you get to without calling that, putting that bullseye on your own forehead. It does feel like if you end up using that kind of language, but as close as you can get to in legal filings, including Governor Greg Abbott willing to take it all the way when it comes to these legal challenges that are going on. So we had mentioned a letter last week from like Texas Border Communities Coalition, something along those lines, and saying like, hey, can you all work together? I'm also going to call that, without having a verbatim to point to, a no. Resounding no, maybe a screaming middle finger no, maybe in a different way to put it, but still very much a no, and a lot going into it. So a lot of conversation and other things going on here. Feel free to leave your 2 cents over on the social media throughout. Just like RJ also saying, vaping and all the chemicals need a lot more study. Yeah, from the people I've known who have done that in all of the ways they have done that, doesn't seem like it's been a great thing. I know it was actually at City Hall, God, years ago at this point, at least 7, when there was the changes in the ordinances and kind of adding it into the anti-smoking statutes that exist. And there was a lot of people saying like, hey, it's just water vapor, and like in the midst of city council, like not inside of the chambers, but just outside of it, people doing like not exactly the vaping tricks, but pretty dang close. And like, I get it. Some people are excited. Some people it helps. Some people I'm dubious about if there's actually help happening, but particularly when we start getting into those legal gray areas, well, we'll talk about that here in just a second. And John Browston is saying that West Side yards still contain a lot of leftover pollution from Asarco. I know West Side was impacted. I mean, certainly anywhere nearby. I want to say Sunset Heights and like Manhattan Heights, a little bit closer to and where the habitation was at the point in time from the bulk of the operations of Asarco. Let's put it that way. Whereas more of where that study was happening, though, that's also been off of the front burner for years now. That was more around the time when, anyone else remember that vague, because I never really saw it and I wasn't reporting at the time, so if I was not fully informed on it, that's well, before my time, so to speak. But the rebrand, I think it was recasting the smelter, was, I think I still have a sticker around it somewhere, on an old Asarco helmet that we got as part of the work that we were doing on the site and the documenting of it. But let's just say that was, it's commiserate in my mind of the same time frames of when that was happening, the idea of, hey, let's turn it back on, which, having been through there, to go on a complete aside for a second, that was never going to happen, because it's kind of like saying, hey, that broken down old pickup on the front yard that hasn't moved in 20 years, that can be redone, right? Like, sure, if money is no object and you got the time, energy, and willpower to replace everything besides the shell, and even then, you're going to need a new paint job at the very least, and probably a whole lot of body panel work. So sure, you can restart it again. That's more closer to the vein of what Asarco was, even at that point in time. But that is when, at that same time, again, the rebranding, recasting the smelter, I think that was the plan words they were working with, was those ideas of the contamination being seen. Because from the industrial age and, the industrial revolution and all that, the idea of smokestacks was considered a remediation effort. I know it's a symbol of industry and stuff coming out of it, is how we still, even to this day, think of, assembly lines and what is looking like industry, economy, yeah, all those kind of things. The point was to disperse the stuff coming out of it as much as possible, because they recognized that at ground level, oh no, that stuff would be toxic, noxious, and awful. But the idea of, well, we pump it up high enough and then it'll disperse and it'll be fine. And yeah, maybe not quite as much, but enough of the aside. Yeah, those traffic major issues continue on. I mean, I-10 is shut down for the widening project to disrupt traffic from all the way till, I believe, at 6 a.m. Tuesday. Yeah, I believe I misspoke earlier. It is I-10 West, specifically, Red Road to Vinton, which is why Markey was having that quite a lot of bit of fun earlier today, or maybe even over the weekend, because, yeah, it did start Sunday, 6 a.m. and should be concluded Tuesday, 6 a.m. Sometimes they're a little bit faster on this. I wouldn't necessarily bank on it. Let's just really hope they're done with it before rush hour comes along. And this is allowing for the switching of the traffic, because they're getting into it in earnest. And if anyone's saying, well, I don't drive through this area, why should I give a hoot? This is what is probably going to be a similar-ish kind of pattern happening for basically the entirety of I-10, because, as I keep telling people, there's always someone that seems surprised about it whenever I mention it, either in person or in this format that we have, that all of I-10 is facing, maybe not the widening, though the downtown conversation, I've been having people ask me about that as well, and the best answer I've still got at the moment is stay tuned, because there are still questions. I think some of those projects are pretty close to letting, and that's the last indication I had, but the full scope of them, that's the remaining huge, massive, floating over the Franklin Mountains question mark size scale kind of thing there. So if you're trying to get to Las Cruces over the weekend or today, and before, again, early tomorrow concludes, you're going to be having a not great time with it. And a lot of the traffic backups, ramp closures that I've been seeing over, that's pretty close to my neck of the woods, has been not fun. But of course, they're going to be looking at eventually, before too long, same thing on the opposite side as they continue that roadway work. So buckle up is what I'm saying. I mean, you should be all ready if you're listening to this on the road, but also as you head out, just stay forewarned. And just in that same circumstance, also from our news partners over at KFOX 14, they do have the list of all road closures happening between technically yesterday and through the 12th, this coming weekend, including nightly closures on I-10 eastbound between Schuster and Cotton, full closure there, removing existing striping and restriping. Guardrail repair going on through, it just should have concluded there today. And then also on along Loop 375 between Padres and Yarborough. We'll be continuing on, though, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. In those order. Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. 54 southbound between Trowbridge and Montana. Wednesday, East Franklin between Kansas and Campbell. Thursday, I-10 eastbound at Porfirio Diaz exit ramp closed. And Friday, I-10 eastbound at Trowbridge exit ramp closed. And then also general maintenance and, again, those shutdowns. So they got the full list if you want to see how this ends up affecting you, your commute, or just your life and livelihood. Be sure to check that out with them. And then also RJ asking, water vapor putting all those kids in the hospital? Short answer is no. And that was the argument at the time when it comes to the idea of vaping, of, oh, it's just water vapor, and why that has not really borne out in my mind. And again, there's a lot more to that, particularly some reporting from El Paso matters, but a lot of focus in the community, I do have to say, including billboards y'all may be seeing around town. But tell you what, let's take that first break of this hour right now and then get into that as just one more of those back to school concerns, I do suppose. So let's go ahead and take that break. You are, of course, tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Coming out of this break, talking more about that and all the other things going on affecting us here and source or other things here in the borderlands. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
A little slowing coming to downtown El Paso, I-10 eastbound at Kansas. There's an accident in the clearing stages. It's been blocking the left lane. A crash involving a couple of vehicles Gateway West approaching Lee Trevino is blocking the left lane at Goodyear Drive. An accident with police on the scene, Alameda, just east of Yarborough. And eastbound Montana slow from McRae out to Zaragoza, 12-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Late Night, open until midnight or later. Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
Are you a business owner, CEO, or responsible for marketing? If you are, iHeartMedia can help you reach your goals and find new customers. We reach more consumers in your target area than anyone else, and we can give you access to those potential customers more cost-effectively across radio, digital, podcasting, and social. We'd love to show you how iHeartMedia can work for you. Get started today at iHeartAdvertising.com. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
Hi, I'm Burt Ward, Robin from TV's Batman, inviting you to feed your dog natural, non-GMO, Gentle Giants dog and puppy food. Dogs eating Gentle Giants and following our special feeding and care program are living as long as 27 healthy, active years with a wonderful quality of life. Holy wow, 27 years! Think of all the extra years you could enjoy with your dog at Target, H-E-B, and stores near you. Try Gentle Giants cat and kitten food, too.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
There are more identity threats than you realize. Even if you monitor your credit, only a little personal info needs to leak out, like your social security number or password,
for you to become a victim.
LifeLock alerts you to threats you could miss. If your identity is stolen, a dedicated US-based restoration specialist will work to fix it. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions, but everyone can save up to 25% off their first year with promo code NEWS. Go to lifelock.com.
Kids dream big. Protect your child's dreams by keeping them healthy. If your son or daughter is age 11 or 12, the American Cancer Society recommends giving them the HPV vaccine to help prevent HPV cancers later. Learn more at cancer.org/dreambig.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to get at us, a lot of comments coming in, including a lot of concern about things such as roadways, vaping, and a lot of other stuff going on here. And, of course, well, talking about front yards there, as John Brazelton mentioned as well, some concern coming about that I want to address here, if ever so briefly, specifically that of from the reporting in El Paso Matters. Referring to this one, El Paso water issues drought emergency amid record-setting heat, minimal rainfall. Now, this is not necessarily a new thing, or at least immediately new. This is the, as they note, the third year in a row that they have passed a resolution, a drought resolution set for next spring. Third consecutive year in a row they have done that now because of, well, there has been maybe more precipitation. People may be hearing more about snowpack going on both here and many parts of the West. That is having a positive impact, but still pretty at or near historically low levels. Like I was seeing some pictures the other day, recently over the weekend actually, of the change to Lake Mead, and that's been good and important, even if they're maybe still finding bodies out there. Similar-ish, if not the same kind of criminal way, situation with Elephant Butte, which again, El Paso Matters note, currently sits at 22% capacity, which doesn't sound great, well, until you compare it to the 4% that it was most recently in last year. So better, and which one of the reasons that the release from the Rio Grande has been handled the way it is, but still noting that it being at such low levels, I mean, a fifth of the amount ain't exactly great. And that still does have impacts on the city of El Paso and how it plans its water resources. So more ideas about more well drilling, more procurement of the supplies needed to maintain and still keep useful the existing wells and the water sourcing technology. Some other great articles that come out recently that I believe we talked about, including from El Paso Inc., about how El Paso avoided basically a water crisis. Day zero, as it's been put in other places, particularly Johannesburg, South Africa, that is still teetering around that last I was checking and the last update we did about that. But there's still the expectation that, again, a source from El Paso Matters on there saying we're going to drain Elephant Butte again this year, and so we are going to need a huge snowpack again to have a full river supply next year, quoting Scott Reinert, Water Resources Manager for El Paso Water. So, sure, better, but it's not a permanent solution and still has a lot of issues coming potentially along with it. So if there's a continuation of the otherwise trend, if this isn't the true breaking of it from just this year, sure, rain is good. Rain is by no means bad. Yeah, it's one of those kind of generational things, including RJ saying, I remember before odd and even, you just watered your yard. Yeah, referring to the whole odd and even and what is it, not on Sundays kind of things. I'm having to do the hand watering anyway to try to resurrect what little yard we have, but we don't have a sprinkler system anyway. We just got the, I bought one to stake in my yard, but that's a bit different from the programming thing a lot of people have these days. I miss the one I had before we moved, but maybe someday. But, it's part of just, the culture around here now. It's not expectation. And definitely not as, I feel volatile as, say, Arizona has been. I know we've had some conversations about that recently. But they do have posted up the full board meeting from this most recent meeting that it was put forth from Wednesday, July 12th, including that resolution by the El Paso Water Utilities Public Service Board, accepting report. Okay, it's a lot of legalese. about purchasing more water and some of the other resolutions and information that is available from there and that 2023 drought resolution. So still with an eye towards it, but more to come, and we'll see how these situations continue to develop because they certainly will affect the city of El Paso and surrounding areas in significant ways, if not handled very, very carefully. Some other things, of course, going on here, as we were mentioning at the top of the show, vaping. And again, if you feel like you've been seeing more around town, I've noticed the billboards as well, even besides the conversations I've been having. Some of the ones we're planning on for y'all this week, including, say, with El Paso Children's Hospital, be visiting with their CEO and president on it's not their 10th anniversary anymore. They're now in the 11th year, but still issues like this coming up, and particularly when it comes to vaping and the back to school. That's one of the major, sharing moments, shall we say. I mean, kids get sicker, usually have anyway, whenever school comes back, and things like, oh, hey, what vapes are. I know there's been a lot of satirization on this. For some reason, I keep seeing that one South Park episode about kindergartners vaping. Bad thing, but of course, they take the extreme satire take on that anyway. But the idea of it and of being safe, like kind of RJ was questioning there a second ago, is one of those pervasive issues, particularly the formats they can take. I mean, I think people at this point have become, if you know anyone that vapes, I'm going to say odds are they may have one of those kind of giant brick looking things, like maybe even be like the size of your cell phone, at least in span. It may be wider than that because that's the battery pack and then the little juice reservoir, if that's the way to put it. Clearly, I don't vape because I'm not all up on the terminology, but the way it works is then that uses that battery pack to heat the coils to turn it into the vapor that then gets inhaled. And the thing about it is that when we're talking about either the stuff you get from local stores or buy from legitimate retail outlets, or the stuff that you're getting that comes from more dubious ones, because even in places where there is legality or state level legality, let me correct myself there, around marijuana, pot, THC, and those kind of derivatives, this is still very much a schedule substance and even has harsher penalties because it's considered concentrates and along those lines, particularly here in the state of Texas. And that's what some of those billboards have been about. You want an instant felony? Try vaping THC. And that really is part of the concern here. So a couple articles out from El Paso Matters on this kind of part of it, including one, a rise of youth vaping THC, what you need to know, and felony charges for vaping THC rising among El Paso youth. So, there's definitely that. And I mean, things have, some more things change, the more they stay the same, right? Marky Mandingo saying, I had a teacher at Austin who used to go smoke on the emergency stairs during class, late 80s. Now he'd just be vaping. And yet, whether you think that's a good idea or not, I do not partake. It's not my bag, not what I want to do with my time or spend my money on in particular, but also the youth impacts. Like the idea that, again, those myths about it's water vapor or stuff like that. Let's just make this perfectly clear. That is inaccurate because particularly when you get into the, at the very least, legal gray areas, if not out and out illegalities, there's not a whole lot of regulation going on there. Let's just put it that way. And that was, of course, was one of the concerns going on with the vaping industry in general, particularly around the time that the city of El Paso was looking at changing its ordinances, was about, do we actually know what's in this stuff? Is there any verification? Is there a way for a consumer to be sure without having to do an unreasonable amount of research or have expertise on their own part? And in short, back then, better part of a decade ago, the answer was no. And so there has been some of that going on. But when you get into these already illegal substances being then put into vapes, it comes out as a very much, there's not even, regulation is the least of the concerns. Let's put it that way from those that are producing and, in fact, avoiding the rest of it. So they have some very interesting views on what the makeups of them are, including the breakdown between THC and CBD versus what goes into the regular e-liquids. But yeah, and the form factors they can be, again, there's those the kind of brick looking ones that have, the smoking or the mouthpiece coming out of them. But I've seen ones that, for those listening on not online, I've got a basic flash drive here with me, and I've seen ones that can look, this one's like a hole in the middle of it, so maybe not exactly like this, but they can look exactly like this type of size and format. They can be exceedingly small, and the form factors vary wildly. Like I feel like the next most familiar one people might know of is the vaping pens, the ones that are vaguely pen shaped, except of course for the mouthpiece that look like it, but they don't even have to end up looking like a vape. It can just look like a vague electronic device. And in fact, there was this has been a concern for several years, kind of fell by the wayside in the midst of say, global health pandemics and stuff like that. But right before, I remember in 2019, was talking with both some of the medical and legal authorities here in our region, both the say district attorney's office as well as some with say the county hospital district as well, about the concern about both the legal and health impacts from vaping. And they actually along with that, as part of that campaign, provided a flash drive that had more material on it, and that flash drive functioned as a flash drive in this case, was the exact same shape that there were at that point in time actual vapes being produced as. So that's why, particularly with back to school and, kids sharing information, what did you do over the summer? Hey, what's that new thing that you've got? Those type of things can definitely make it, and also then the El Paso Matters article does mention the modifying or quote unquote hacking. Hacking is a way overused phrase, but I get it. And the concern that comes along with it, that this can be dicey at best, as much as there has been concern about the quality or contamination going on with the rest of illicit drug use. This is by no means immune to it either. And just all the issues with it. They're going to be doing a series through the middle of this week, I do believe, focusing on this and how there's a lot that, there's even stuff along these lines that is available in our community, such as Delta 8, because it is one of those, okay, it's not a synthetic similar type one like a spice is, but it's a through the current legal loopholes type of thing. So there are even things that can be bought in this region and in this area. So point is that they really come down to at the end about what parents can do. They do know that parents may want to keep an eye out for symptoms of marijuana use, such as red bloodshot eyes, mood swings, increased anxiety, and being more tired than usual. And that talking with your kids, as much as that may be anathema to some out there, is still pretty important. And I would definitely recommend it. And again, felony charges can come along with this. So talk about a double whammy or even more of potential life-ruining consequences coming out of this. So this is some from their 4-part series on this that I'll be watching, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have on our airwaves before too long as we get further into this. But with that, let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we'll talk more about this and the other issues, including like RJ saying, yeah, seeing the commercials where parents are trying to figure out what is the vape, making vapes to fool parents and teachers needs to be stopped. And yet it kind of is it's an arms race at that point, isn't it? And, well, being involved in your kid's life is a good start for just about any type of situation. But we'll talk more about that. And, of course, some of the things going on in the State House, including the preparations for, that next legislative session, TBD, but then also the impeachment trial for embattled Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, and what his legal team very much taking a active stance in the lead up to it. So we'll talk about that and a whole lot more coming out of Austin or surrounding it anyway. Right after this break, you're of course tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Stay tuned. More and a whole lot more discussion about what affects us here in the borderland after this break. You're on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Vanessa Castillo with your CBS 4 headlines. Power outages are being reported across El Paso this morning. Some were without electricity for over 7 hours starting yesterday. El Paso Electric tweeted yesterday saying the extreme temperatures caused the outages and crews were working around the clock to restore the power. And students who are part of El Paso's largest school district are heading back to the classroom this morning. While it is an exciting day, some parents say they're a little uneasy. At least 19 elementary schools and 2 middle schools in the district lack refrigerated air, while 3 elementary schools, a middle school, and 1 high school have a mix of swamp coolers and refrigerated air. To deal with the issue at hand, EPISD says they'll leave windows cracked to let dry air in and damp air out, as well as open diffusers in the AC vents to keep air circulating. Parents say that isn't enough. EPISD says campus leaders should follow protocol under the 2023-2024 guidance. For more local headlines, you can check out our website at cbs4local.com.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Heads up for an accident southbound on the Loop in the East Valley at Montwood Drive. That crash is blocking the center and the left lane. You can expect delays there. An earlier crash on the I-10 eastbound coming into downtown to Kansas has cleared. All lanes are back open. Stop and go I-10 westbound Wrestler up to Vinton is a 17-minute delay. and an accident's blocking the left lane Gateway West approaching Lee Trevino. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. The good news as we work our way through the week, not as hot this week. That's actually some great news. Also, that slight storm chance is going to be back in the forecast. Partly cloudy skies, about 104 for your Tuesday, 10% chance of a storm Tuesday. Partly cloudy for your Wednesday, high back around 104 with a 20% chance of storms for your Wednesday. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Late Night, open until midnight or later. Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
I'm back to doing what I love and more, thanks to the Good Feet store.
This planet is so incredibly beautiful that I can't get enough of it. I did 950 miles on the Pacific Crest Trail, and Good Feet was with me all the way.
Hi, this is Mike with the Good Feet Store. Are you ready for summer adventures? Don't let your feet get in the way. Learn how the Good Feet Store can help.
Your passion's important, but if your body aches and if your heel feels like you've got a nail stuck in it and won't come out, trust me, it's going to wear you down. The Good Feet Store knew what they were talking about and took the time to really dial in what I needed. I hiked 84 miles in the Himalaya and to do it pain-free. You think I'm not grateful for Good Feet?
You deserve comfort in your life too. Sandal season is here and Good Feet fits into all your summer shoes, even flip-flops. Visit the Good Feet store today for your free fitting and test walk.
Thanks to the Good Feet store.
Schedule your appointment today at goodfeet.com.
Life can take a turn for anyone, and if it has for you, remember that there's so much for you to turn to. Everyone needs supportive people and healthy outlets in their lives so you don't have to face hard times alone. Visit turntosupportstx.org for the help that's right for you. This report is sponsored by turntosupportstx.org.
Children who grow up in poverty are part of a destructive cycle. At Child Fund International, we find this unacceptable. In 25 countries, we are vigorously fighting poverty and improving the lives of children and their families. Learn more at childfund.org.
Weather and traffic info. You need it? We have it. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed. News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. A lot of people tuning in, chiming in over there, including about the issues and challenges of parenthood these days, including RJ saying, if talking is uncomfortable, you can text or post on your kids' social media. Haven't there been like PSAs along those lines, like, hey, if you can't talk to your kids, at least text them? Like, yeah, that's a concept that's existed for a little while now. But hey, at a certain point, like, it's jokeable, but at a certain point, whatever works for you, as long as you get the idea out there and are actually like, communicating your morals, values, etc. to you and yours. Otherwise, who you expecting to for you? Anyway, of course, those issues going on, and Rick Reyes on the whole water usage thing, saying, I live close to Memorial Park. When they water Memorial Park, grass/weeds, instead of sprinklers rotating, some of the sprinklers stay in one place, or some sprinklers hitting the grass and sidewalk. What a waste of water. Yeah, there's been some like median plantings on my route that there was definitely one instance of, I think it's primarily like a drip for the most part, but one clearly had an overpressure situation, was geysering a little bit. Seemed to have gotten fixed before too long, but also I can't imagine, we've mentioned this in the past, that all of the, well, driver or tree beware type things. I really need to start like a blog of, hey, here's the stuff and the damage being seen from whatever the hell people were doing over the weekend on the roadways. Just in my neck of the woods, there's been another like half dozen or so, like trees taken out, rock walls crashed into, odd utility pole or two. Yeah, it's bad out there for that. And for anyone trying to not like defensive driving is probably the most important thing you can do for yourselves around here. So, I mean, if you've never had to take the class, would still kind of recommend it because it doesn't matter what you're doing on the road. If someone else is being an idiot, as we say in my family, you're still going to have a bad time. So we also have Matt Olson joining us with the somewhat reserved yo. I feel like it's a pretty good representation. In any case, that's still going on and happening and all of the bits of fun. But of course, when it comes to the State House, a lot more fun going on that way. I do want to say one thing that was brought up by our news partners at KFOX 14 from the power situation, taking a current look at El Paso Electric. There is a smattering of outages going on throughout the area as well. The odd of them being like 10 to 15 in size, the odd 100 or more. Like there's a couple one in Northeast that is looking at about 64 outages currently, down into the Mission Valley, about 131, even past like south of Socorro, it looks like here. So some of these things still ongoing and being dealt with. But yeah, there's still, and even for the state of Texas, from our national news partners, there have been some warnings being issued, particularly from ERCOT, about power use, saying they're extending a weather watch through the rest of this week due to the higher temperatures, higher demand, and potential for lower reserves. They say grid conditions, ERCOT authorities anyway, that grid conditions are expected to be normal. No call for conservation and no suggestions of any rolling blackouts just did that or coming up just yet. But the week is young and we're still looking at those very strongly triple digits in our region. So stay tuned there. And I just personally, I know a bunch of people who have had at least one right now, not the power, but their AC out in their office. So it's a question of what level of utilities you have there, as we also have Sean Gardner wishing everyone a good afternoon to you as well. Do appreciate it. And so with those issues going on, I'm sure, again, that the AC repair techs in town are doing gangbuster business. In fact, it almost seems like it's an acceptable excuse of, sorry, I had to cancel my appointment. That's when the AC techs could come. And just no one questions it. Everyone's like, oh, yes, that's very serious. Now, I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying that feels ever so slightly different this time around. Also more conversation going on about the different parks and particularly garden center, Marky Mandingo talking about lack of water, and then it goes water elsewhere and lights are on all night, and wastage is there. Not a great thing there either. But so the El Paso Electric looking at focusing on that, but that's the latest from them over on their social media channels. But checking in, of course, in Austin, a whole lot of stuff, including a flurry of both legal issues and challenges coming out of the end of next week. One of the things that we weren't really able to get to, including the fact that Governor Greg Abbott, when it comes to those border barrier issues, specifically the Eagle Pass, Del Rio, the floating ones, the buoys, so to speak, that are also having other barriers involved with it and enforcement going along with it, vowing to take this to the Supreme Court. From our national news partners, Texas Governor Greg Abbott refusing to back down in the face of a Justice Department lawsuit over what's being called a floating border wall. Not a too bad way to refer to it, I would say. Abbott saying the barrier is protected by the Constitution. The state is prepared to take the case all the way to the Supreme Court, and that the system of buoy does continue to float in the Rio Grande, again, near the town of Eagle Pass specifically, and it's meant to deter illegal immigration. The DOJ lawsuit alleges the floating wall violates the rules that ban anything that affects the flow of water, among other things. It's a novel legal situation, I guess, going on there specifically, but of course, there have been other updates and important things coming along with that, including from the Texas Tribune as of the end of last week, that there's been noted that a body was found stuck in buoys that were installed by Texas in the Rio Grande. And in this case, believing Texas authorities, that is, that the person drowned upstream and floated into the buoys near Eagle Pass. And that there has also, of course, been a criticism from, both federal in this side of the border, as well as Mexican officials, including in a news release sent out Wednesday of last week when it came to that alerting about the buoy being found, but also other things and other releases coming out of this. And they're calling this, among other things, a violation of our sovereignty with the placement of the buoy. So that continues on, and I kind of expected it, that this would at very least be potentially destined towards the Supreme Court, but we'll see what happens in the interim. At the very least, again, like I mentioned, that letter being sent out by a coalition of border communities not the organization name, but that is them, is maybe not going to have that much effect in this case. But of course, elsewhere and otherwise going on in Austin, there is the expectation about a month out, if I'm not mistaken. It's expected for early September, the beginning of the impeachment trial for embattled Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. And it's not exactly, it's not an affirmative defense that his defense team has been working on, but a very, I would say, aggressive one in its own right, including previously we talked about seeking to disqualify some of the quote-unquote jurors, the members of the Texas State Senate that will then be ruling on and voting on the progression of and the final outcome of the trial. But out as of today, again from the Texas Tribune here, Ken Paxton legal team works to invalidate every article of impeachment before trial. I think that the most recent part of that from last week was that his team was looking to put the lie to, or at least put up these serious legal questions of at least 19 of the different counts. I think it was out of 20 in total. And so some of the documents and coming out as public just as of today, again, citing from the Texas Tribune reporting on this, that Paxton's attorneys routinely accused House impeachment managers of using, quote, any means necessary, end quote, to, quote, overturn the will of the voters, end quote, who elected Paxton last year. So, yeah, previously had been 19, but now seeking to do all 20 of these different items that were put forth as the impeachment in that vote, 121 to 23 by the House back in May, arguing the accusations are unsupported by evidence. So it's an interesting set of filings on a already legal proceeding. And there was last week that there were the two motions to dismiss the 19 of the 20 articles. And that case, arguing all but one, again, citing from the Texas Tribune here, ran afoul of the prior term doctrine, which bars officials from being impeached for conduct that predates the most recent election. So going against it in a different way, it does end up looking like. So that, of course, is scheduled for not too long away from now. And there's also been noted by the Texas Tribune, another article title here, Ken Paxton lawyers test limits of gag order, restricting comments on impeachment trial. Trying through, I guess, primarily through the filings to make their displeasure about the case and the issues with it known. But going back to the border issues here for just a minute, is that there's been some protests actually going on in the Eagle Pass areas. Article title there from the Texas Tribune, Eagle Pass residents sour on Texas Governor Greg Abbott's Operation Lone Star, particularly noting that the issues surrounding the body that was found, at the very least, within there. So that's been one of those interesting continuing to develop situations. I know there's been some other statewide reporting on that, but one final one here that I do want to make sure to mention, a Texas Tribune among others reporting on this, about how there is going to be an election here in Texas in November. Yes, 2023. There may be some, depending on your location or where someone is hearing from this, other things on the ballot, but it'll primarily be the whole slate of constitutional amendments that are required to, among other things, push through the final legal backing for the tax cuts and the property tax relief, specifically, that was finally passed by the Texas state legislature after, 3 sessions, or better parts of 3 sessions. I don't know if you really call the first special session a real one, because it was almost more of a mic drop by the House on saying, hey, we did our job, you do yours, and it not really coming out of anything. But with this second one now finally in the book, second special session that is, and that moved through, that'll be the legal backing on it. And as much as there is still, Governor Greg Abbott has repeatedly said, not even just I expect there'll be another one, but he has repeatedly said there's going to be another special session because school choice, whether it be vouchers, savings accounts, what have you, whatever that comes out being, he has said he had plans to call it. I do wonder if he's going to try to squeeze that in before this impeachment hearings, because that's basically going to be a session in and of itself. And I can't imagine, I think it would be wise, at the very least, even if legally possible, to have a special session and that going on at the same time. Let's talk about maybe your cross purposes or your heavy distractions at the very least. But so the question is, will he try to squeeze it in before, or maybe call that immediately after that impeachment trial and hearings end up moving forward? It's not all doom and gloom from the statewide valley and view, though. I will say that some of the things being noted by the Texas Tribune also, Texans in Congress take bipartisan path to boost semiconductors, a crucial industry to the state. Of course, there was the Texas semiconductor act that was passed, and of course the national one. So focusing on that, and specifically on the Helps for Texas, so particularly through the CHIPS and Science Act. Decent one, and like to see that moving forward. Absolutely. So yeah, and when it comes to our local resources there as well, conversation going on, including RJ saying, I talked to an El Paso electric guy last year, and he said all the conversions to refrigerated air is putting a strain on the local grid. Infrastructure is not ready for it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I value the refrigerated air that I have in both our work environment here and at my house very greatly, having most recently been in swamp coolers. But I can also understand that the power demands are much greater. It's one thing to spin a fan and have a water pump, which is the incredibly basic version of how swamp coolers work. And it's another entirely to also have to have a condenser, other things, sensors like that. So, and the fact that it's becoming considered not just a luxury, but a necessity for pretty much anyone looking to relocate in our area, even internally. Yeah, I don't expect that to stop anytime soon. So let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we'll go ahead and open up those phone lines as we usually do at this point during the program. So if you want to get on the line, add your 2 cents. That number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Heads up for an accident southbound on the loop in the East Valley at Montwood Drive. That crash is blocking the center and the left lane. You can expect delays there. An earlier crash on the I-10 eastbound coming into downtown to Kansas has cleared. All lanes are back open. Stop and go I-10 westbound Wrestler up to Vinton is a 17-minute delay, and an accident is blocking the left lane Gateway West approaching Lee Trevino. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Audible. Boost your imagination with Audible. Listen to the biggest selection of audio entertainment, from celeb memoirs to motivation and more. Audiobooks, podcasts, and originals. There's more to imagine when we listen. Sign up for a free trial at audible.com.
Now 60 seconds on scams and frauds. From the Federal Trade Commission, this is attorney Larissa Bungo. Larissa, I saw an FTC consumer alert that reported scammers were using the real names of FTC employees in impersonator scams. What's up with that?
Scammers want to gain your trust so they can get your money. That's why they keep pretending to be from a government agency, including the FTC. Unfortunately, they even use the names of real people who work at the agency. But I want people to know how to spot these scams. The first thing to know is that the FTC will never, ever ask you for money. The second thing to know is that the FTC will never threaten to arrest you. And finally, nobody who works at the FTC will ever promise you a prize, but scammers will. Tell the FTC right away at reportfraud.ftc.gov.
Thanks, Larissa. And once again, that's reportfraud.ftc.gov.
Attention, your money is now controlled by the U.S. government.
Picture a world where your every purchase is monitored, tracked, and controlled by those in power to suppress the freedoms of those they see fit. Hi. My name is Jason Hansen. I'm a former CIA officer and New York Times bestselling author. And right now, I become very focused on the impending rollout of the central bank digital currency. This is not a work of fiction. It's a terrifying reality looming on the horizon. But there is a bit of good news. I've partnered with Advantage Gold to offer you a solution. They are specialists in converting your traditional assets, like those inside an IRA or 401k, into tangible assets such as physical gold and silver. Don't allow your money to be controlled. Claim your free gold protection kit from Advantage Gold. Call 800-900-8000, 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000.
Advantage Gold is not an investment advisor or a tax advisor.
Call 800-900-8000.
Life can take a turn for anyone, and if it has for you, remember that there's so much for you to turn to. Everyone needs supportive people and healthy outlets in their lives, so you don't have to face hard times alone. Visit turntosupportstx.org for the help that's right for you.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in. However you may be doing so, a lot of ways to chime in on the show, including over on the social media, and of course interact with us in general, including those phone lines. Open now if full up at the moment, but just keep that number handy, as very happy to fulfill Richard DeMille's request. 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Pretty good for those of you all online. Don't worry, we have it at the top of the screen when we're in the segment there, so you can find it to your heart's content. But of course, for those on radio or just tuning in with us, 915-544-5876 is the number. And a lot of other commentary coming in. And we're short timing at this segment, so we're going to get to the calls right at the top of the hour here. But a couple other comments I do want to get to, including a Mark Mendingo saying, it's quite empty in Albuquerque yesterday, but Caballo Lake looks a lot better than last year. I mean, Caballo is the start of the runoff, so to speak, what comes through the Elephant Butte retaining dam. And there is technically a dam there, though it's one of those underwater, more of a check dam, I believe is the correct phrase for it, if I'm not mistaken, meaning it checks the flows as opposed to just kind of running freely. It makes it go over the top of it, so it does get low enough it would stop it, but otherwise just kind of regulates the flow, so to speak. Manda Mankanda made very brave, and so brave. I'm going to make the sacrifice and stay on swamp. I mean, if it works for you, there was one house I was in that we had this basically long central hallway. It was ranch style house, and there was basically at either end of this long hallway going the length of the house a window, so we were able to do the good cross flow. It actually worked pretty well, and frankly worked better than because it was 2 units at that point, so we could kind of variate which side of the house had the heat of the day and the sun on it kind of thing. But when we then switched to regular refrigerated, it actually didn't work that well because we went to 1 unit, and that means that it could be 10 degrees difference in temperature from one side of the house to the other. So it can work well, don't get me wrong. Just saying that there's a lot of people less and less willing to deal with it these days. If we had any level of constant humidity around here, I'm sure more people would be saying, forget this, get me on that refrigerated, and of course the challenges that come along with it. So let's go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we'll get to more of those calls, more of those comments, more of everything we do at this point during the show. But of course, stay on the line if you're there, and again, keep that number handy. When one call ends, another line becomes available. 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere. Ruli's International Kitchen. Find them just right off of I-10 and Executive 4176 North Mesa. Just a great little gourmet dive with new features all the time, including for their month of August, the Rick at Night features happening Friday and Saturday nights after the regular closing, continuing on with their, among other things, pizza specials and reverse happy hour. So Rick, as in Ruli's International Kitchen, Rick at Night. Check them out there. Find them on social media, of course, or give them a call, 915-313-4806, 915-313-4806, or of course find them online at rulisik.com. That's Rulis, RULISIK.com.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
In the East Valley, southbound on Memorial Highway at Montwood Drive, an accident's blocking the center and the left lane. Expect some light delays there. Westbound I-10 is still closed at red till early tomorrow morning. Follow the detour signs. That's going to take you to North Desert. You've got 10-minute delays from Wrestler up to Vinton. That earlier crash on Gateway West approaching Lee Trevino has cleared. All lanes back open. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Attention business owners. Was your company impacted during COVID? If you had W-2 employees during 2020 and 2021, you may be entitled for up to $26,000 per employee through the Employee Retention Credit Program. This is not alone. The IRS paid back billions already. We've helped thousands of businesses just like yours. So let us help you. At ERC Business Solutions, we make it simple. We do it all for you, so you won't have to worry about the complex application process. There's absolutely no risk. If you don't get paid, we don't get paid. Most businesses do qualify, even those with no decline in revenues or those that already got PPP. Discover how much you can claim. There's no cost or obligation. Call now, 800-200-2250. That's 800-200-2250. Get up to $26,000 per employee. Call 800-200-2250. 800-200-2250.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Former President Trump is fighting the protective order in his election interference case. The Department of Justice filed for the order, asking the judge to place some limits on Trump's speech about the case after the former president posted, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." The judge in the case is expected to decide soon. A severe storm outbreak in the east and south is bringing widespread damage, wind, hail, flooding, and the possibility of isolated tornadoes. Earlier today, the FAA implemented several ground stops on the East Coast. Portions of Washington, D.C., Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania are bracing for the brunt of the storms. Families of service members killed during the chaotic pullout of Afghanistan are demanding answers from the Biden administration. Mom Kelly Barnett lost her son at the Kabul airport.
Biden, the Biden administration, incompetent, cowards, evil.
Several family members shared testimony Monday at a congressional forum in Escondido, California. Many said they've received inadequate answers from the administration on what occurred at the Kabul airport, where 13 service members were killed in a suicide bombing. The mother of Sergeant Nicole Gee, who was killed in the attack, said she lives every single day knowing her daughter's death could have been prevented. Wall Street is closing with stocks higher.
This comes as investors have a busy week ahead with more earnings reports and inflation readings. Then later in the week, last month's producer and consumer price indexes will be released. That'll give traders a feel for the status of the economy. At the closing bell today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 407 points. The S&P 500 rose 40 points, and the Nasdaq gained 85 points. I'm Liz Warner.
Tyson Foods is shutting down 4 more U.S. chicken plants. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. A former Minneapolis police officer who held back a crowd during George Floyd's arrest in 2020 is being sentenced to prison. Tu Tao was sentenced to 4 years and 9 months for aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter in the death of Floyd. Tao's already serving a 3.5-year sentence for a conviction on federal charges of violating Floyd's civil rights during the incident. A discovery in a South Florida lake may hold keys to unsolved crimes. Natalie Rodriguez has more.
City of Doral Police Chief Edwin Lopez says a team of mostly volunteer divers hired by a private company investigating missing persons cases found not one, but nearly 30 cars submerged in the water off Northwest 90th Avenue.
We will be working with multiple entities over the next few days to retrieve those vehicles from the lake and recover them and see if they're tied to any criminal activity.
Statewide, these divers have reportedly found 60 submerged vehicles to date that are possibly linked to crimes. Chief Lopez says first thing is to coordinate the retrieval of the cars from the murky water.
It's National Lighthouse Day. Bree Tennis has the details.
There are 779 working lighthouses in the U.S. Most are privately owned, and there's one in every state. They can be used on lakes. At least 7 of them are reported to be haunted. They're not as necessary as they once were. GPS is better at pointing out rocky shorelines. But back in the day, they stood proudly, shining 1,000 watts of light to ships.
Grand Rapids, Michigan is being voted the best beer city in the U.S. for the 3rd year in a row. USA Today announced the three-peat Friday as part of its 10 Best Readers' Choice 2023 awards. In announcing the award, USA Today wrote, the city's official Beer City Ale Trail lists more than 80 breweries in the surrounding area, and the local calendar is constantly filled with beer festivals, events, and promotions. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now, your chance at $1,000 and a trip to our 2023 iHeartRadio Music Festival. Text the nationwide keyword music to 200-200. You'll get a confirmation text and info. Standard data and message rates apply in this nationwide contest. That's music to 200-200.
Get ready to win your way to our 2023 iHeartRadio Music Festival and $1,000.
You'll be there. T-Mobile Arena here in Las Vegas, September 22nd and 23rd.
Streaming live only on Hulu.
The iHeartRadio Music Festival.
Capital One is a proud partner of the iHeartRadio Music Festival for the 7th year in a row, bringing great products, rewards, and services to its customers. What's in your wallet?
This report is sponsored by turntosupportstx.org. Life can take a turn for anyone, and if it has for you, remember that there's so much for you to turn to. Everyone needs supportive people and healthy outlets in their lives so you don't have to face hard times alone. Visit turntosupportstx.org for the help that's right for you.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Hello, I'm Dr. Tony Evans, and I'm excited to have you join me on this new podcast, Heroes in the Bible.
Come to me, boy. You and your God will crumble beneath my feet.
He beckoned the giant and said,
I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts and creator of the stars.
Listen to Heroes in the Bible with Dr. Tony Evans on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of people tuning in, chiming in over there. Do appreciate it, including some people saying that they're having good evenings. Good for you there. And ideas of, electric strain, utilities, etc., things like that. And just because he asked for Shark DeMel, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM is the number to call. Full up at the moment, but keep that number handy as we are definitely going to be going through second hour of the show. Got those phone lines open, if again full up at the moment, so just keep the number handy. And you're saying a lack of sincerity? No, couldn't be in any way. Will you pin out on me think the sarcasm was lost in translation? Expecting sarcasm to go through on text only is a little bit of a fool's errand, but also, I would never think you're insincere about anything you say. In any case, other conversation going on. Those dropping those likes and reacts that we do appreciate, including Bernadette Bandicole, Sean Gardner, Matt Olson, Marky Mandingo, Jim McCravey, James Holmes, Robbie Flores, Monica Cervantes, RJ, and Ida Beza Gardner, and a lot of different things going on, including the idea of electric cars in the future and how much strain on the grid then. To have an update from our news partners at KFOX 14 going on for this coming hour. So there are challenges that abound, and that has always been one of the challenges coming along with the idea of electric car use has been, how will the grid end up supporting it? I mean, there have been states that in previous years have even restricted the installation of solar panels. You had to be approved to do it. I think like your particularly picky states like Hawaii, etc., where resources and availability of things can be kind of limited, and you had to get approval to be able to install it because of the concern on, think about the way the grid was designed for the longest time. It was a single or multiple distributed sources, but it was a one-way street, so to speak, right? It was from the distribution sources to the end users, and that's it. So the idea of there being back and forth or anything more complicated than that isn't necessarily designed to handle. And that's why there have been certain upgrades and things going on and changes to the idea of, distributed generation of energy, but it's by no means guaranteed or necessarily going to happen overnight. But a lot more conversation on that and other things, including, never use sarcasm, never touch this stuff. Anyway, let's get to those phone lines now. We do have the line with us right now. Raul in the Northeast with us. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Recently, you talk about Bob Moore and El Paso Matters a bit on your show, which is great. He is awesome. That is a great organization, super important to the city. And Bob Moore is the man. He's a recipient of UTEP School of Liberal Arts Golden Nugget Awards. I saw him receive it not too long ago. I was actually there to see another friend of mine get the award, but he turned out to be there too, and I've known him for some time. In fact, recently I attended a gathering of friends to meet Bob at my friend's home, David and Gerald Marcus, who are local entrepreneurs and social justice activists here in El Paso. They've been friends with Bob for many, many years. Anyway, then later I saw Bob Moore again at the Plaza Theater when he interviewed this filmmaker of this documentary. The filmmaker's name is Isaac Artenstein, and he made a film titled People of the Crossing, The Jews of El Paso. It's a great documentary. I was very impressed. I knew quite a few of the folks that were featured in that film. Now, back to El Paso Matters. Recently, he published an opinion letter from a friend of mine by the name of Gerald Marcus. And she's a writer and a video editor, and she's one of the founders of an organization known as Join Us for Justice. And they're part of the El Paso chapter of the Americans United for the Separation of Church and State. Now you really ought to have this local organization's leaders on your show, Andrew. They have some outstanding El Pasoans on their board of directors. Very, very smart, interesting people. Now, the Marcuses are from, originally their family was from Romania, and they fled Hitler and came to El Paso, like a lot of other Jews, too. I found out that El Paso was very, very friendly and opening to Jews. And once some got here and they saw how friendly the natives were, they started bringing other folks here. And they've been a tremendous asset and resource to this community. As a matter of fact, my father worked for some Jews who owned a very big business in Juarez for all of his career, the Oppenheim family, very, very prominent also. Well, what Gerald writes in that particular column is that she says, I feel a shadowy undercurrent of a disease that won't completely disappear because there's no inoculation for hate. And she writes about the pogroms of Russia and Poland, the Inquisition of Spain, and the other times and places that Jews were violently set on their way. And she wrote about being survivors and how they're still surviving the trauma of generations later, even though, they weren't there. They were part of it, but this is what happened to their parents, and their grandparents. And she writes also that it's scary that just like humans have the power to turn dogs into killers, humans also have the power to turn ourselves against one another at will. And so she's very, very concerned about what she's seeing in this country right now. They're scared. They're telling me that our Jews have their passports ready to go. Okay. Now, I understand that you met with their president, David Marcus, at his office for quite a bit of time. Is that so?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when that was, but I mean, we're always interested in looking at other topics and things to explore, and didn't fit on the calendar at that point in time, but not something we're opposed by exploring at a future date by any means.
Okay. Will you invite him to your show? Can I have him call you so that you can set a date?
I mean, yeah, again, we've had conversations in the past, and I'll be happy to visit with him again.
Okay, no, but to be on the show.
Yeah, that would be the idea.
With him at his office, which you did for a long time, but to be on the show, that's what I want. Will you do that?
Yeah,
have
again,
him on your show.
I'd be happy to have a conversation with him about that.
But you're not committing to having him on the show.
Well, we tend to do our booking not exactly in this method, but again, we're open to the topic, certainly, as we are a lot of things that affect us here in the borderland.
Yeah, well, he talks about those things that do here. A very important organization.
Sure.
And now you got Mayo for Marco talking for every day now for hours. So I mean, or for a long time. So I really think you ought to have these folks. I would like to have him on and hear him on your show. Can I expect that I might be hearing that in the future?
Sure. Like I said, we'll look at it and see what we can get on the schedule here. We don't usually say, yeah, we'll do it right now. We have conversations with people and we schedule things.
Okay. I would also suggest that maybe you try to get a hold of this filmmaker that made this film about the Jews of El Paso. Did you know about it? Did you see it or anything like that?
Wasn't able to make the premiere here, but in cross-supplying part of our shows here, this is a topic that we have featured on the El Paso History Radio Show, and we're in active talks with them about it. Weren't able to get it to work around this time because it was a kind of whirlwind experience for them as this being the premiere of it, but do fully expect to have it, particularly in that way, because it's about history and a little bit closer to that show's wheelhouse in the future before too long.
Absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I was going to suggest that you have them on the history show. Like you say, it may be a better venue for it. But a very, very interesting story. Like I say, the Jews of El Paso.
Certainly.
And very prominent people. The biggest department store of El Paso at one time was from a Jewish family, the Popular, and you could just go on and on. There's so many prominent Jews. I'm proud to say that I found out late in life that on my father's side, they were probably Sephardic Jews. And these are Jews that were expelled from Spain when Ferdinand and Isabella consolidated Spain and kicked out the Moors, and then gave the Jews the choice of either becoming Catholics, splitting, or maybe being burned at the stake. Pretty interesting that I didn't know that, because I was raised a Catholic. I mean, went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, Catholic all the way until I grew up and became an agnostic. But in any case, thank you for the time.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, thanks for the point and the suggestions here. We do try to take these in equal measure, and we have actually previously, we're referring to there, the crypto Jews, as it's referred to, and not as in cryptocurrency, but as crypto as in secret, like cryptography, that same route. The crypto Jews in the Anasim Center of El Paso, that has been a previous guest on the El Paso History Radio Show. Fascinating circumstances there of people who, even to this day, existing in our region as the legacy from the Inquisition and even the things before it was fully codified as the Inquisition, were forced to give up their heritage in public. But even to this day, they might think like, hey, my grandmother used to go down on Friday nights and put on a garment she wouldn't wear any other way and say these words that she made me memorize. Why was that? So it's an interesting circumstance. And so, I was not able to see that premiere of the documentary you're talking about here, but fully expect to be something that we'll have on our airwaves in a different format before too long here. So tell you what, we got to take that next break right now. And coming out of this break, we'll get to more calls on the line there as well. So if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is, of course, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
In the East Valley, southbound on Memorial Highway at Montwood Drive, an accident's blocking the center and the left lane. Expect some light delays there. Westbound I-10 is still closed at red till early tomorrow morning. Follow the detour signs. That's going to take you to North Desert. You've got 10-minute delays from Wrestler up to Vinton. That earlier crash on Gateway West approaching Lee Trevino has cleared. All lanes back open. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by TurnToSupportsTX.org. Life can take a turn for anyone, and if it has for you, remember that there's so much for you to turn to. Everyone needs supportive people and healthy outlets in their lives, so you don't have to face hard times alone. Visit TurnToSupportsTX.org for the help that's right for you.
In this week's Marketers Report, we hear about the importance of local radio from Allison Griffin, head of marketing at State Farm.
iHeart has such a broad broadcast reach that is local, and for us to be able to touch customers with a local feel but at a national scale is so efficient and important for us.
As the #1 audio company, iHeartMedia gives marketers access to the audiences, trusted influencers, and data you need to grow. If you're a marketer, go to iHeartResults.com.
Hi, I'm Burt Ward, Robin from TV's Batman, inviting you to feed your dog natural, non-GMO, Gentle Giants dog and puppy food. Dogs eating Gentle Giants and following our special feeding and care program are living as long as 27 healthy, active years with a wonderful quality of life. Holy wow, 27 years! Think of all the extra years you could enjoy with your dog at Target, H-E-B, and stores near you. Try Gentle Giants cat and kitten food, too.
Cashback is not available on
gas in New Jersey and Wisconsin. This is Matt Crowder live at the gas station on 41st Street reporting on those skyrocketing gas prices. Excuse me, miss, are you buying less gas now because of the high prices?
Oh, I never pay full price for gas anymore. I just use the free Upside app that pays you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute, are you saying you actually get paid cash when you buy gas with the Upside app?
Yes, I get real cash back every time I buy gas.
Well, does that actually add up to anything?
I've made around $200.
Wow. Well, there you have it. Stop paying full price for gas. Download the free Upside app and get real cash back every time you buy gas. This is Matt Crowder Radio News Network. Download the free Upside app now to earn real cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code SMILE for an extra 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, to PayPal, or any gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code SMILE for a 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code SMILE.
Traffic's bad enough without Mother Nature adding to your headache. Traffic and weather all day. Stay informed with El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to join in, chime in, participate in the show. Phone lines, again, pull up again, but just keep that number handy, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM, and some interesting commentary, including maybe some disappointment out there today, but also other commentary, including Trita Sack saying persecution of the Gypsies or Romani people in Spain. Interesting topic as well, creating a flamenco dancing in Spain. I mean, once you start looking back at the roots of food, culture, all those things that now exist in our region, it can be fascinating in how much part of history it is. 1492 is an important date, not just because of, as people of a certain age may know the then rhyme, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, but also thought of as basically the Reformation and the reconquest of Spain as part of it. So anyway, that's a little bit far afield, but related to what we were talking about. But in any case, let's go back to those phone lines now. Again, comments coming in, people chiming in, adding their 2 cents. Appreciate that. But we have online with us right now Ben on the east side with us. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Andrew, I just have a question. This new about the no new revenue tax rate.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
That was proposed by the city manager and chief financial officer for the preliminary budget for the 2024 fiscal year, which sort of happens to be an election year, of course.
True.
According to Weston, the tax manager or the new city manager, he said this fiscal year we achieved a $37.6 million budget surplus that we will use to invest in our community without having to issue more debt.
Correct.
Okay. In 2021, this is the only article I could find, El Paso had a $1.2 billion of assets available to pay bills totaling $1.5 billion. In other words, we had a $386.6 million financial. In order to take care of that shortfall, each taxpayer in El Paso would have to send $1,900 to the city. I don't understand why we're going to spend, according to them, they're going to spend a $37.6 million budget surplus. So therefore, we're just going to go ahead and spend that on different things that we want, and instead of paying down the debt that we have right now. and especially with interest rates going up.
Mhm.
I don't understand this, and maybe I don't. And it just seems like the last time I heard, we don't have a printing press like the federal government, do we?
True enough, but in this case, so to kind of answer your question, and what I think you're kind of getting at here is that, yeah, there's a El Paso Matters refers to it as a roughly $38 million year-end revenue surplus, and this is from their article titled "Property Values Key Factor in Whether El Pasoans Will See City Tax Break" by Lida S. Perez, dated August 1st. And so in that part of it, yeah, that, I mean, it fits with what you're saying, the 37 and change $million, that is actually going to be put towards specifically some outstanding projects, including the TRZ zone, TRZ number 2, that is specifically along I-10 and Trans Mountain up through Americas Avenue and North Zaragoza, that will be intended to be paid off, and that is expected to have save a roughly $20 million in interest. And so that interest savings is for the next year what would go towards the increase in projects and the increase in, I mean, among other things, staffing and public safety agencies, particularly the El Paso Police Department, but also fire, I do believe, is included in that as well, and keep it at that no new revenue tax rate. City of El Paso does have a posting on this as of technically yesterday, 22 hours ago, if you want to be exact about it, from the tax rate, the hearing date being posted as coming up. Oh, I just had it right there. Going to be happening again, August 15th, 2023. And they lay out what the rates are. Yeah, the proposed tax rate of, let's call it 82 cents per $100 valuation. Yes, the other points beyond the cents mark does matter, but just for the sake of radio here, and that they'll keep it at that no new revenue tax rate. They do list what the voter approval tax rate would be, meaning the amount that it could be raised up to before it would have to go to the voters. But again, the proposed tax rate will be right at that no new revenue tax rate level, is according to the filings and the postings from the city on this.
But we're in almost a $400 million financial hole. And so because we've got this surplus for this last year, we're going to, instead of trying to pay down our debt, we're going to spend it on a whole bunch of things that we want.
Well, in this case, it is going.
I just don't understand how that makes sense.
So
financially,
so when we're talking about this tax rate, this is technically, I don't know if it's technically put the same way from the city and the county, the way they put it, but this would be the maintenance and operations budget, right? This would be going towards the activities that the city does, as opposed to the interest rates for issued city debts, bonds, etc. Because once you include that, I think that the total amount of spending that the city does goes closer to, say, $2 billion. Or at least closer to that. So it depends on which part you're talking about. The best way I can kind of use to illustrate that is that probably again, better part of a decade ago, there within the county, there was the penny swap election. You may recall that one, in which case they were basically saying, hey, we paid off this debt, but we'll basically, are you approving us keeping the tax rate the same? And we'll basically swap that, what was going to the debt service, over to being what we then use for the maintenance and operation budget. That's the best way. That's not what the city's doing, but that's the best way I can kind of think to illustrate that concept right now. So basically, when it comes to other issued debt, bonds, that is how the city, besides tax rate, does raise money. And that is a whole nother component. This number, that again, roughly 82 cents, technically lower than that, but just for the sake of brevity, that is what is going to be the tax rate you pay on your property taxes, specifically for the maintenance and operations part of the budget.
Okay. I hope you have somebody that will come on, from the city that will tell us what's going on there, because it just, again, we have a $37.6 million budget surplus, and so we're going to spend a whole bunch of money on different projects and everything else that the city wants to do, and yet we have this large extent debt that the city owes in the first place. Sure. Why don't we pay down that debt?
To my understanding, the way they're putting it forth is that essentially that is what they are doing. They are paying down an existing debt amount with a large amount, the bulk, if not all, of that surplus amount. But tell you what, I take that in good measure about wanting to have someone on here. We'll reach out to the city. They have occasionally been, before actions are voted on, not wanted to talk about this, but we'll reach out and certainly see what we can get on air, particularly before we get to any of these, the next votes at the very least, like you mentioned. We do have an election year coming up.
Yeah, the election, that's one thing that kind of gives me a question mark of whether or not
Fair
this
enough.
have to do with the election and getting these people reelected. I appreciate the time.
Sure.
Stay well, stay safe. God bless, and let's go, Brandon. Hopefully, when you have these guys on, it'll make more sense to me.
Fair enough. And I'll get the questions in mind. So I do appreciate it. You have a good one there.
Thank you.
All right, with that, let's go ahead and take that next break right now, get a little bit back more on track. So, again, that phone number to call if you want to get on the line, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 news update. Power has been restored to most of the borderland after multiple outages were reported last night. According to El Paso Electric, the power outages were due to extremely high temperatures over the weekend. As of 3 o'clock this morning, crews had restored power to customers affected by the heat-related outage. There were 890 customers without power. It's back to school today for students in El Paso's two largest school districts, Isleta and El Paso ISD. The El Paso School District kicked off the new school year with a new Montessori school. It's called the Children's House Way. It's being offered at Moreno Elementary, and it's the first of its kind in the district. It's offered to students as young as 3 and through 6 years old. This has been your KFOX 14 news update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Lane restrictions on the I-10 westbound mean stop-and-go traffic for a while from Wrestler up to Vinton, a 5-minute delay. Car carrier is stopped in the left lane. It's causing delays on eastbound Artcraft at Donovan Drive. That earlier crash southbound Memorial Highway at Montwood Drive's cleared. All lanes are back open, and it's slow on Montana eastbound McRae outside the loop to Zaragoza. 12-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. The good news as we work our way through the week, not as hot this week. That's actually some great news. Also, that slight storm chance is going to be back in the forecast. Partly cloudy skies, about 104 for your Tuesday, 10% chance of a storm Tuesday. Partly cloudy for your Wednesday, high back around 104 with a 20% chance of storms for your Wednesday. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples has great prices on everything you need for back to school. Right now, a 24-pack of Crayola crayons and marble comp books are just 50 cents each. Pricing may vary in-store and online. NC26, comp books in-store only. School on, save on at Staples.
Attention business owners. Was your company impacted during COVID? If you had W-2 employees during 2020 and 2021, you may be entitled for up to $26,000 per employee through the Employee Retention Credit Program. This is not alone. The IRS paid back billions already. We've helped thousands of businesses just like yours. So let us help you. At ERC Business Solutions, we make it simple. We do it all for you, so you won't have to worry about the complex application process. There's absolutely no risk. If you don't get paid, we don't get paid. Most businesses do qualify, even those with no decline in revenues or those that already got PPP. Discover how much you can claim. There's no cost or obligation. Call now, 800-200-2250. That's 800-200-2250. Get up to $26,000 per employee. Call 800-200-2250. 800-200-2250.
Life can take a turn for anyone, and if it has for you, remember that there's so much for you to turn to. Everyone needs supportive people and healthy outlets in their lives so you don't have to face hard times alone. Visit turntosupportstx.org for the help that's right for you. This report is sponsored by turntosupportstx.org.
Me, a cat, moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of things and a lot of conversations going on in many of those different places. But if you want to chime in on the social media, a lot of people doing so. And we'll, of course, continue taking those. Like, I barely get paid for this show. So if anyone else is going to tell me what to do with it without contributing, well, I'll just say good luck with that. In any case, back to those phone lines now. Squeezing in what we can before the end of the show, which I think we'll do a fair shake at. We do have on the line with us right now. We do have joining us.
Hello there. On the subject of immigration, it's important to fact check this one thing that was said this past Friday on your show about immigration so that your listeners are not misinformed. I'll post a link to the fact check in your comments on your show's Facebook page for your listeners to read after, this call. But, the white supremacist Stephen promoted the Great Replacement theory on your show this past Friday. And the Great Replacement is the white supremacist conspiracy theory that Democrats are deliberately trying to replace the white race and their white vote by bringing in more Hispanics into the country. And just a reminder, this was the motivating narrative that caused Patrick Crusius to kill 23 human beings in our community with the goal of terrorizing Hispanics into not coming into the country. And, the Great Replacement white supremacist conspiracy theory has been the motivating narrative behind many right-wing terrorist attacks, not just the one in El Paso. And this has not stopped the right-wing media from promoting this racist and terrorist-causing lie. But like Stephen said, and I quote, the Great Replacement theory, that is something Democrats brought up. Joe Biden brought it up himself when he was vice president, that importing non-white people is the source of our strength and that it was a good thing, end quote. That false white supremacist narrative, I fact-checked it immediately and saw that there was a fact check on it, and that narrative, that false narrative, came from Tucker Carlson, who edited a video to purposely deceive his followers into believing Democrats are purposely trying to replace the white race with Hispanics or non-whites. Tucker Carlson had an out-of-context video edited that he presented to his listeners, saying this is proof of a plot to replace the white race by Democrats. The full context didn't even remotely communicate or prove that false white supremacist narrative. And I've mentioned many times that mainstream right-wing information sources and Republican politicians are actively promoting racism towards Hispanics, white supremacy, and false white supremacist narratives to scare their followers into thinking Democrats and Hispanics are some existential threat to the white race here and the country as a whole. Like, I couldn't think of a better example than this anecdote to show what I've been trying to communicate to you and your listeners for about a year. Like you have your everyday conservative who's adamant they're not a white supremacist because they're fine with people of color existing or they're married to a Hispanic person. And you have your everyday conservative who has no clue what a credible source of information is. They just turn on Fox News to listen to the most watched show on the station at the time, Tucker Carlson, only to be purposely deceived into believing in the Great Replacement white supremacist conspiracy theory with edited video and completely false context. Like, that call from Friday from Stephen was full of many white supremacist talking points that he was deceived into believing by bad faith right-wing information sources. This is how white supremacy, in the average conservative mind works. They're bombarded with all of these lies about immigrants and Hispanics. So even when you refute one or or all of their claims, they still believe Hispanic immigrants, Hispanics, and Democrats or trying to destroy the country. And, your average conservative doesn't view themselves as a white supremacist because they just view the racist nonsense they're saying as the truth. This is like why it's really important to fact check everything you hear and always question the credibility of your information sources. Like listening to that call, led me to wondering, like, why didn't you tell Stephen and your listeners that there's no plot by Biden to replace the white race with Hispanics? Like, that what Stephen said causes racism towards Hispanics and right-wing terrorism in our community, like what Patrick Crucius did. Like, why didn't you tell him he was wrong?
I mean, we talked about the issues and the things going on here, but okay, let's just say that you started out this call by saying that he's a white supremacist, but now he's deluded by it. So again, you're maybe getting the idea that screaming at the people that you're saying are misinformed is not the right way to do this, but you're not quite there yet. Also, we've made this clear that we are not a fact-checking organization. I mean, mostly what you see is what you get when it comes to us on air here. I don't have a whole team of researchers. God, I'd love to have a team of researchers because then we wouldn't have to rely so much on other reporting and other things going on around town. We could talk about them and investigate them directly. I mean, I've done the odd FOIA, or at least prepared one, and ended up not being able to follow through with it in this type of position, but it takes more than that. So if you want to say that, hey, this was wrong, and talk about the way it is right, I mean, that's part of the conversation we have here. When you come on and start saying, and by the way, everyone else here, as you have often said, that, and as if I'm some kind of cult leader, which if you take even the sparest glance over at the comment section, I would say, man, this is a really weird cult with some people shouting at me from the other side of the political aisle as well. But in any case, to your core idea on it, I mean, there are certain aspects. I mean, you're not going to quite use since I know you dislike it so much, the broken watch twice a day kind of thing here. But I mean, there are certain bases that have been talked about when it comes to immigration. I mean, particularly when Western nations in general, it's been discussed as immigration is necessary for a population replacement, keep GDP growing, those kind of things. I'm not saying I agree with Tucker Carlson in any particular way, shape, or form. I mean, he had still kind of does his own platform and way he goes about things that I have my own disagreements with. But I mean, this is not even just a mainstream political ideology thing. I mean, it's talked about in the economic sense, about the idea of having persons come from outside of a country of national origin in order to, particularly like Europe and Asia, Japan specifically, and there's an idea of potentially even China being subject to this as they're looking at some serious demographics and population level, replacement level type issues, but that's a little bit further down the road for them particularly. So that's where part of this ends up coming into. But if anyone's saying that, well, I don't know if I can actually say this one without getting demonetized or a lot of things, but the idea of the end of any particular race, along with this as being the focus of it, ends up being, I will say, a bit extreme. I know that there are anecdotal examples, there's postings that I see about the idea of it, and some people out there that definitely said, oh, no, yeah, getting rid of these people would be great. And that's why I say, in no uncertain terms, that anyone disliking or wanting to get rid of any group of particularly immutable characteristics for the reason of, well, I just don't like them, as no real justification. And there is no reason that it cannot be stood by, because it has been proven multiple times over centuries to be both frankly, a bogus, to put it in a more modern term, type of ideology, and ends up being a rah-rah, let's focus on it and bring it together. But it never stops is the one thing. It was what I come down to, because even if someone wins, even if someone gets there, it's a power play. And if someone is saying that, hey, we need to get rid of this group, and even if the major parts of that group are gone or are able to be eliminated, we were just talking about, among other things, the Inquisition and how that ends up, it's an Ouroboros. It's a snake serpent that eats its own tail, because it's it's reductive thinking among its own thing. And so anyone who thinks that, yeah, we just do this, it'll be fine. There's another phrase that I think of sometimes: the cage that was built for someone else can definitely be used on you, paraphrasing from a different song and a source inspiration. Maybe I'll post up that link in the comments there. But anyone thinking that, oh yeah, no, if we just do this thing, it'll be great and nothing bad could ever possibly else happen, ends up being wrong pretty much all of the time. I cannot think of a particular time in history when the idea of, well, we have set these things, I mean, look at it. And not even just in the Nazis often come up, but you look at it in like, the Khmer Rouge, the French Revolution, for crying out loud, and how there were those that led it and the reign of terror thinking, we're going to be in charge now, and ended up being faced to the guillotine themselves. So when you get into this kind of extremism and this idea of purity, whether it be racial, whether it be ideological, whether it be religious, ends up being more and more reductive. So anyone saying that, let's espouse this and go with it is just, it's complete bunk. And there's no justification for it ever, but particularly not in the modern day, knowing what we know now. Now, that being said, if you truly feel that everyone who has concerns about, immigration and issues, I mean, this is a country of laws, and saying that, well, if you have issues with the immigration policy or you fit this category, I'm just saying, for your goal, the way you have espoused it and put it forth of wanting to have people be educated, knowledgeable, deal with the misinformation they see in the world, I still question and would strongly suggest you take your ego out of it. Because if it comes down to, well, I put forth this very strong idea and you've called more than a couple of people and don't think that this hasn't been clocked and that there hasn't been threats made on this here, so I probably allowed way too much leeway in your labeling and very, very slanderous terms of other listeners and callers to this show here. And you have been threatened with legal action on this in the past, and I've made this perfectly clear before, that anything that's going to threaten the existence of the show is not going to be something that we're going to allow or entertain. I mean, there are certain red lines even before we get to that, like, again, immutable characteristics, or even the religious ones, maybe not technically one of those immutable ones, but still fairly significant and the source of quite a lot of pain and human suffering and other those kind of things. And therefore, it kind of fits in the same vein in my mind. But saying that anyone, or even getting close to saying that anyone who is, not in favor of particularly this administration policies or anything along those lines, I mean, there are people who go absolutely way too far. There have been people who have commented on this show about, hey, what if we just do insert X violent act here? And the simple answer to that is no, because that's not what a country of laws deals with and has in place. So good luck with the proselytization that you seem to be wanting to do here. And again, would encourage you to, if you want your arguments to be taken seriously and to be actually entertained by anyone towards the goal that you have espoused, would strongly encourage you to consider about, okay, the people receiving these things beyond the ego. I want to say that's one of our key differences here. We do take on opinions and we deal with them in their own manner, which tends to be more on the idea of, okay, what do I say when I answer the calls? What's on your mind? It's not what do you want to have me respond to? What are you going to say correctly today? I mean, that's not how we go about it. We take very different things, and I know you're often over there screaming in the comments, saying, hey, why don't you say this to this person? I'm not you, dude. You have your own ways of dealing with doing and things. And again, I have certain concerns or questions about how that has worked out for you. But, just continue to wish you good luck on it. Let me know if you've changed anyone's minds along those ways. In any case, let's squeeze on at least another call or two here before we get to the last part of the break here. We do have on line with us right now, Frankie and Messia with us. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
Hi, did I hear this correctly from Befuddled Ben? He said something about you folks in El Paso have got a $35 million budget surplus. Is that what he said?
Just under 38, but yes.
Okay, wait a minute. Now, what are you guys going to do about this? I mean, are you going to go nuts and spend it for stupid stuff? Or are you going to be smart about it and then take it and invest that $38 million into, say, something like, I don't know, in the index fund or some investment vehicle that is going to return profit? Now, let me say this. Now, you already don't even realize that you've got that, because the fact is you're going about your life and so forth. So you got a little bit of extra money. You're not missing it. And the reason I'm saying, or similar to that, when I was in the Army, they offered, you could every month to get a $50, $75, $100 savings bond. And once you bought that, you never knew that you lost that money or that money was gone. You follow what I'm saying? You guys out there, get your financial people out there. And I know you got a lot of very smart financial people there in El Paso. and then you take that $38 million and you put it in an investment vehicle, and in 5 years, 6 years, you could be looking at 3-4 times that amount, not even maybe more. What do you think of that?
So, in short, I mean, that was also part of what we talked about with Ben, but just to reiterate, in short, they're not going to look at investing it into a separate instrument. It is going to be used to repay some existing debt in order to save on the interest going forward, specifically for one of those, what is the specific phrase for it? Tax reinvestment zone, TRZ is the name of it. And so that's going to be going to TRZ that has about $47 million in debt owed for projects within the zone. And so that surplus is going to go with it, including some of the effectively unassigned reserves that exist within the city of El Paso already to pay that off. And that'll save $20 million in interest is what's expected from it there.
Okay, I get that. I mean, no, and I'm just throwing that thing out. And I understand the people in El Paso government, they got their ducks in line. I get that. That's okay. But I would just say, geez, right out of the box, and I'm going off the wall here, Andrew, and everybody out there in the Southwest Border region, you got to go to Las Vegas, 100-1 odds. Put that $38 million at 100-1 odds that Donnie Dotard is going to jail. You guys would have $3.5 billion. Think about that. What do you think of that?
Again, I don't know about how I feel about Vegas odds, about betting on politics or legal proceedings in this case in general, but let's just say in general, what you're also talking about, even outside of the specific quote unquote investment you're discussing there, is, I mean, really starting to talk about what would be considered a sovereign wealth fund, which I do think that some of the bigger cities, like maybe New York, Chicago's, etc., but is mostly the purview of like states in general. I mean, that's basically what Alaska has done. I mean, a lot of people think that it's all of the oil wealth in Alaska, and it certainly contributes to it, but what it mostly is, it's umpteen, I think, $1 billion in that case. That is, well, in other terms, you would consider an endowment. That is therefore a financial chunk that is by its own magnitude, its own mass, its own gravitational pull from that amount of money, that based off the interest alone is what, say, those payments of, the some thousands of dollars that end up going to the residents that have lived there for at least a year in Alaska do, and other similar states when they are looking at things like that, or other countries even, that's more in their scope and scale. So I don't really know if that would be possible for the city of El Paso to do like bonds or etc., but it's an interesting idea at the very least.
No, really. I mean, look, I got a little went off the deep end there. Okay, listen, just because I love this radio station. I have so much fun calling into this radio station. Yeah, I went off the little deep end there, but in a very small element of it, it's a workable situation. Take extra money, put it in an investment account, and by the end of the day, you've got a great emergency fund. That's my main point.
Hey, interesting concept there. So, well, do appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Okay, Andrew, take care.
And with that, I think we have time for one more quick call on the line here. We do have Marco in Central on the line with us here right now. Marco, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew, how's it going, brother?
Doing all right there. We got a few minutes here, so what's on your mind?
I'll do it real fast. We're going to be opening up again tomorrow, so anybody interested, come talk to me.
Oh, sure.
I'm Marco for Mayor, 425 South Oregon, Valentina's Restaurant. That includes yourself, Andrew. I know you're very busy, but come have some great enchiladas. We'd love to take care of you, brother.
Yeah, fair enough. Appreciate the offer.
That I want to talk about, and this is real important, okay? I swear Eric is the Unabomber talking in the mirror, hating on himself. And so I just, again, I got to give you this, okay? I know he comes out and he talks about the replacement migration. No Republican ever mentioned this, okay? This isn't a Republican idea, okay? This is I'm gonna look at this. I'm gonna take out my glasses real quick because I'm getting a little old and I can't see very well.
Mm-hmm.
And here we go. Ready? I'm gonna put. Here we go. It's called Population Division, Department of Economic and Social Affairs, United Nations Secretariat. Okay, that's the number one page. And then this is the cover page, and the cover page says, dun, 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 migration, replacement migration. So you go to the second one. Okay, here you go. When was this proposed? Let's look at the date. Oh, March 21st, 2000. So this document does exist. And it's in every language, by the way. And then again, it'll tell you population, division, Department of Economic and Social Affairs, United Nations Secretariat. And this is the main headline of the discussion page, because this is a discussion page for anybody that's a leader of a country. So this is how they influence migration through these theories, through the United Nations. Okay, this is the name of their agenda plan. Replacement migration is a social and declining and aging population. In other words, replacement migration to declining and aging population. This is what they wrote. And so now you read through it, and they'll tell you all plans that they have for replacement migration. I don't think it's not that it's a blueprint to destroy a country, but bureaucrats view this as a vessel to increase their migration. And so they'll take these ideas and they'll use them, but nobody is saying anything about, hey, the replacement migration theory. What the hell is that? What, you want to take a bunch of Hispanics coming from Mexico and come into America? Hello, Eric, Raul. They're coming in anyways, okay? And they're going to keep coming because the main populations that feed America is South America. If we were on the border of Europe, I'm sure we'd get Europeans. So that's just a dumb idea. Like the way Raul and Eric propose it as is a cudgel. And I'm going to make this last statement over here real quick, okay? When I come on your show, Andrew, I make it my utmost mission to be as positive, as reassuring as possible, because that people read. And when Eric and Raul come on your show, I promise you this, the energy, the negative energy that they just exude is palpable. You can taste it. Because not only, this is the thing, they just don't hate you because you don't defend their ideas. Like I said the other day, you're a phony, right? This is what Eric's yelling at you.
Sure.
But just because, like here's a prime example. Raul has a perfectly normal conversation. You're like, okay, this is cool about Marcus. Are you going to have him on your show? Well, I guess I can look at the agenda. Sure. Oh, so that means you're not going to have him on your show. I'm like, bro. Is this the Raul Hour show? No, this is the Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. So if Andrew wants to have him on the show, guess what? Andrew's going to have him on the show. If he's an interesting person who's done a lot of things, guess what? He'll be on the show. He'll have anybody on his show. For Pete's sake, you have Eric and Raul on your show. That is just like having Satan on your show. It doesn't get any worse than that. So come on, guys. Look, you can say whatever you want, but I tell you this, the highest energy form, okay? I've told you this before, right? Put your fingers together, you can't, because that's electromagnetic repulsion.
And Planck's
energy
distance,
flows through everybody, okay? I'm just talking a little bit of spirituality. Energy flows through everybody. The highest positive energy is love. Guys, just try a little bit. I know there's things that bother you, but we can formulate our ideas in a positive way because that's what this country needs. We don't need to be pitting each other and hoping for a national divorce. That's not what I want. I know that's not what Andrew wants.
Definitely
and anybody that thinks, including you, Eric, including you, Raul, that you're down for a civil war, I promise you, you will be under your bed cowering, wishing that you wouldn't have pushed it so far.
Well, certainly agree with you there, but we've got to leave it there for today because we are super out of time here for this program. So I want to thank you for the point in the call there. I want to thank you all for tuning in here for Talk El Paso. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. We'll do it again tomorrow as we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. So until then, until next time, I want you all to stay safe out there, look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
No crashes slowing you down on your El Paso freeway. Stop and go traffic westbound from Wrestler up to Vinton. In the Upper Valley, it's a 15-minute delay. A car carrier is blocking the left shoulder on our craft eastbound at Donovan Drive. Slow traffic on the 54 southbound McCombs to Kenworthy is a 5-minute delay. And it's a 15-minute delay eastbound Montana out to Zaragoza. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Wendy's Late Night, open until midnight or later. Wendy's is open until midnight or later, which means all your favorite menu items are up later too. The Baconator still tastes just as juicy and bacony at night. So listen to that craving and turn in for the night at a Wendy's drive-thru. Hours may vary at participating U.S. Wendy's.
In today's Marketers Report, Kate Cronin, Chief Brand Officer of Moderna, weighs in on the speed of audio production.
In this day and age, and particularly at Moderna, where we have new information coming out on a regular basis, being able to feed that information to the audio format makes being nimble and pivoting easy, and that's what I really like about it.
As the #1 audio company, iHeartMedia gives marketers access to the audiences, influencers, insights, and data you need to grow. If you're a marketer, go to iHeartResults.com.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Keep your family and livelihood safe with a stable security system from Mazer Security Alarms. Your trusted El Paso security expert since 1982. You can get the best. Systems start at under $35 per month with upfront purchase to lease options and $0 down payment packages available. Get the peace of mind you deserve with Mazer Security Alarms. For your free quote or to upgrade your existing system, call Mazer Security Alarms at 915-590-0033. Mazer Security Alarms.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The protective order in former President Trump's election interference case is being challenged by his lawyers. The Department of Justice is asking the judge to place limits on Trump's speech about the case after the former president posted, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." Trump's lawyers claim the order would violate the First Amendment, and the judge is expected to decide soon. Several airport ground stops are in effect on the East Coast as the region gets hit with severe weather. Tornado watches have already been issued for portions of Washington, D.C., Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. The National Weather Service says there are increasing threats for thunderstorms and heavy rain as far south as Tennessee. Meantime, CAL FIRE is reminding people about the risk of wildfires in the state after recent incidents. CAL FIRE Captain Brent Pasqua is asking people to be